Hello everyone, and welcome to Hong Kong Ghost Files. This episode was made in response to a viewer's comment and request. If there's a topic you want to hear about, whether it's an urban legend, a paranormal story, or a piece of old folklore, feel free to leave it in the comments. I'll do my best to make it happen. Tonight's story is about the Chinese Jiangshi, or hopping vampire, the kind you've seen in old Hong Kong movies, wearing Qing dynasty robes, a talisman on the forehead, and moving by hopping through the dark. But honestly, has something like that ever really appeared in the real world? This story has been sitting in my notes for a long time. I've always wondered if I should talk about it. After a viewer mentioned it again recently, I decided to share what I've gathered with all of you. And here's the interesting part. This case isn't just an online rumor. There were official records that mentioned it. Whether it was truly a Jiangshi or not, people still argue about it today. So let's begin with the name of this case, the Jiangshi Incident of Nanchong, Sichuan. On August 12, 2005, at a construction site in Nanchong, Sichuan, workers accidentally dug up an ancient tomb during excavation. Since the situation was unclear, the local government immediately sealed off the area and called in an archaeological team to investigate. The team leader received the notice and rushed to the site with his crew to begin clearing and examining the tomb. After an initial inspection, they confirmed that it dated back to the Qing dynasty. Inside the tomb chamber were two stone coffins, each nearly 3 meters long and about 1.8 meters wide. When they opened the first coffin, they found only a few burial items. The body itself was missing. Strangely, none of the valuables had been taken, suggesting that whoever broke in wasn't after treasure, but the corpse itself. When the archaeologists opened the second coffin, they were shocked. Inside lay a body that was incredibly well preserved. The person was dressed in Qing-era official robes, stood about 1.5 meters tall, and still had half of a yellow talisman stuck to the forehead. The face was clearly defined, the skin and features almost intact. The body was tightly wrapped with cloth strips, and around it were traces of glutinous rice and cinnabar powder. Even more unusual, there were no signs of embalming or preservation, yet the skin still appeared elastic, and the color hadn't faded much. Both coffins were made of solid stone, but the local burial customs in Sichuan had always used wooden coffins. Hardly anyone used stone ones. According to old folklore, stone coffins were only made to suppress evil spirits or seal away unclean things. The archaeologists on site all felt that something about this discovery wasn't normal. When nearby villagers heard what had happened, word spread quickly, from one mouth to another. Soon the crowd grew larger and larger. Within a short time, the site was filled with people trying to catch a glimpse, and the police had to work with the archaeological team to close off the area to prevent further disturbance. From the day the tomb was unearthed, the atmosphere around the site began to change. After sunset, the wind felt unusually cold, and even the dogs seemed to sense something. Every night they barked endlessly toward the hillside. At first, the villagers thought it was just wild animals moving around, but soon more and more people began saying that at night, the whole village could hear strange noises, sometimes like heavy breathing, sometimes like muffled voices coming from underground. One worker who lived near the construction site said that during a late-night patrol, he saw flashes of light flickering behind the cordoned area, as if someone was walking around near the pit, but when he looked again, there was nothing there. Other villagers reported that their radios and tape recorders started picking up strange interference, the sounds resembling human breathing. Someone even recorded the noise and handed it to the police. After testing, technicians said the audio waves were almost identical to the sound of a person breathing heavily after intense exercise. The local phone network also began acting strangely. Calls would go through, the signal seemed normal, but deep electrical buzzing sounds would appear during conversations. Members of the archaeological team tried several times to contact their superiors to report the situation, but every attempt failed. In the end, they decided to suspend the excavation, seal the coffins, and wait for further instructions. A few days later, without any new orders, the archaeological team suddenly announced that the body would be immediately cremated, citing public health and safety as the reason. When the news spread, the villagers became even more uneasy. On the night before the cremation, some people clearly heard the sound of metal clashing coming from the direction of the tomb, followed by a deep, heavy breathing that lasted for several minutes before fading away. According to the work records that were later compiled, the archaeological team did uncover several highly unusual details inside the tomb. These records were never officially released, but some people who had been present at the site revealed parts of what they saw, and their descriptions were strikingly consistent. First, after the coffins were opened, all the burial items remained perfectly untouched, yet one of the bodies had vanished. In most tomb robberies, thieves go after gold or antiques, not corpses. The fact that someone seemed to have taken only the body left the archaeologists completely puzzled. Second, both coffins were carved from solid greenstone, thick, heavy, and tightly sealed. In Sichuan, burials had traditionally used wooden coffins, since timber was plentiful. There was no reason to build massive stone coffins unless it served a special purpose. From a cultural point of view, stone coffins were usually made to suppress evil spirits or seal away something unclean. Third, the condition of the body was highly abnormal. It showed no signs of embalming, yet in Sichuan's damp climate, the skin remained elastic, the facial features sharp, and even the internal organs had not decayed. Normally, that kind of preservation could only happen in the extremely dry conditions of a desert. Fourth, the body was tightly wrapped in 9 thick canvas straps, each one apparently treated with charmed water. The way it was tied was strange. The face was deliberately left exposed. It clearly wasn't for preservation, but seemed more like an attempt to restrain its movement. Fifth, the entire body was coated with glutinous rice. A talisman was stuck to its forehead, and the inside of the coffin was sealed shut with a mixture of rice and lime. This method was almost identical to the ancient Taoist ritual known as the sealing of the corpse. In that practice, glutinous rice was believed to absorb energy, lime was used to cut off the flow of qi, and the talisman kept the spirit trapped. Some members of the team began to suspect that the deceased might have been considered an impure person when alive. The team carried out a series of tests to try to explain why the body was so well preserved, but the results gave no clear answers. One of them later described the scene. When the coffin was opened, the skin appeared gray, the fingernails darkened, and the body looked as if it had just woken up from sleep. After the incident, the government released a short official statement, claiming that the excavation was part of a normal archaeological process and that no unusual circumstances had occurred. But the accounts from local residents told a completely different story. According to what they remembered, military units were sent to the site right after the tomb was opened. The roads around the area were sealed off, and outsiders were not allowed to enter. At the time, there were rumors that some people had been injured and taken to the hospital, but no names were ever made public. Later, some scholars tried to explain the case from a scientific perspective. They said that the talisman paper, glutinous rice, and lime found inside the coffin were traditional burial practices meant to ward off evil energy and slow decomposition. The excellent condition of the body, they suggested, might have been due to the airtight sealing of the coffin, the humidity of the soil, and the lack of oxygen inside the tomb. Others pointed out that the excavation equipment back then was limited. When they opened the coffin, there was a strong odor, and the team may have feared the spread of disease. The decision to cremate the body quickly, they argued, was for safety, not to hide anything. However, some details still didn't add up. First, both coffins were built from extremely thick stone, made with materials rarely used by ordinary people, meaning the tomb belonged to someone of very high status. Second, the method of tying the corpse with 9 canvas straps was too deliberate to be just for preservation. As time went on, no further updates were ever released. The surrounding village was eventually redeveloped, and the original site became a residential area. Only a small hill and a fenced patch of land remain, said to be the same place where the cordon once stood. People who pass by at night still claim to feel a cold, damp breeze rising from the ground. The Nanchong Jiangshi Incident ultimately became an unresolved case. Some believe that the body was simply a well-preserved ancient corpse sealed under perfect conditions. Others think that what the archaeological team saw that day was something no human was ever meant to see. Since ancient times, Chinese folklore has always included stories of Jiangshi, or the hopping dead. It's said that they belong to the Yin realm, creatures of extreme cold and darkness, and can only move at night. Sunlight makes their bodies stiff and motionless. In classic Hong Kong movies, we see them hopping forward in long Qing dynasty robes, but that image actually has roots in real folk traditions. It comes from the legend of the corpse herders of Jiangshi. In old times, people who died far from home were brought back to their hometowns by these corpse herders. Usually, there would be one master and one apprentice walking in line. A bamboo pole ran between them, from which several bodies were tied upright by their arms to prevent them from falling. From a distance, when seen through the dim light of the night, the row of corpses, hidden beneath their long robes, appeared to move by hopping forward, giving rise to the image of the hopping vampire. Because the act of carrying corpses was considered extremely unlucky, it was always done at night. Travelers who happened to see it often thought they had encountered ghosts. Over time, the story evolved into the legend of the night-walking Jiangshi. To prevent decay, the corpse herders used special preservation techniques found only in the Jiangxi region. These methods were passed down secretly from master to apprentice, and outsiders could never learn them. Some say they used talisman water, herbs, and cinnabar to keep the bodies flexible and odorless. Whether that's true or not, no one knows. The corpse herders themselves disappeared long ago, leaving behind only the chilling legend of the living corpses that travel at night. In the end, the Nanchong Jiangshi Incident never had a clear conclusion. Some believe the body was nothing more than an unusually well-preserved corpse. Others insist that what the archaeological team saw that day was something no human was ever meant to see. Throughout history, legends of the Jiangshi have appeared all across China, from Jiangxi to Yunnan, even as far north as Hebei. Some of these stories sound like superstition, but others feel like real events that have been disguised as folklore. The world is vast and full of strange things. What we call fiction or movie scenes often draws its inspiration from something that once truly existed. That's all for this episode of Hong Kong Ghost Files. If there's a topic you'd like to hear about, or if you've come across another strange story like this, don't forget to tell me in the comments below.